Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2022 Rise Lunch and Learn series. Today is our final webinar, webinar 6 of our 6-week Lunch and Learn series. Today will be the topic of traditional food preservation and dehydration with Audrey Logan from Dehydration Nations. I'd like to introduce myself before we begin. Welcome everybody who's coming in. My name is Chantel Henderson. I'm the Indigenous Programs Outreach Coordinator for the First Nations Waste Minimization Program, which is hosting this through the Green Action Center. I am Ojibwe. I am from Pemmican and Sagin First Nation. I am Wolf Clan, and my spirit name is Sacred Tree Woman. I would like to let my co-host Jordan introduce himself. Jordan.
Hi, my name is Jordan Gabosh. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Well, here in Winnipeg, and I'm a Métis man, and I'm happy to help out my people with my team, First Nations Waste Minimization.
All right, so let's move on to our agenda. So before we begin, we're going to do a land acknowledgement, and we'll discuss video, audio, questions, technical issues, and Jordan will introduce our speaker, and I will help screen share for our presentation. So, Green Action Center is located on the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, Nehiyaw, Dakota, and Dene peoples. It is also the homeland of the Métis Nation. We acknowledge that our water is sourced from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation, and the hydroelectricity we use comes from numerous First Nation territories around Manitoba. Jordan?
All participants will be muted and video functions will be disabled during the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available online via our YouTube channel within the next 2 business days.
I also want to note that we will be unmuting participants during the Q&A at the presenter's request. So unfortunately, we can't show video because this is a webinar. So onwards. So we would like everyone to, if you get a chance, introduce yourself in the chat column, the comments, your name and where you're from. You can also post any questions here for the speaker. Find the chat feature along the bottom of your screen, left click, open chat, click everyone, and enter your comment or question. Let us know where you're from and what territory. We're currently here in Winnipeg, territory, Treaty 1. So onwards, and go ahead, Jordan.
Audrey Logan is a Nehiyaw / Métis traditional food grower and knowledge keeper currently living and sharing in the inner city neighborhood of West Broadway in Winnipeg, Treaty 1 territory. Audrey's work focuses on revitalizing traditional Indigenous food skills such as moon cycle planting, as well as preservation methods like dehydration. A staunch believer that good food and healing can be available to any person, regardless of ability or income, Audrey has been teaching and empowering community members to believe the same for more than a decade. In 2018, she created a zine to help spread the word regarding her work on dehydration. Her book, Out to Dry, An Urban Bush Woman's Guide to the Traditional Art and Science of Food Dehydration, is available online. Here she is.
Hello, everyone. I guess it's my turn now.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted just to have miss the webinar thing. Yeah, so dehydrating, what is it, right? And if he can turn on to our Dehydration Nations actually was a concept that 2 of my young friend allies had been urging me to do something with. in the sense that I found it to be very helpful in my health, as well as, but I didn't know how to work with the internet stuff. So they created this this page for me to be able to share with people on how I myself have been able to. There's my two cohorts there, Anna Sigrither and Laura Tyler, and so they've been helping me with recordings and other such things, and quite a bit of other stuff. Yeah, so we've been on a food journey together, and we have, you know, because they asked me, well, you know, can you share this with people? And I said, well, I'd love to see a dehydration station in every nation. And they're going, wow, that's a great name for a Facebook page or a group, is Dehydration Nations. Because I'd love to see people being able to use our traditional method of trade, but using dehydrated foods. It's a lot lighter to ship in our modern times, as in back then, it was a lot lighter to carry. So why dehydration? Well, there's practical reasons there. Again, as you can see, it's low energy. When I say low energy, I mean, we tested our dehydrator and found out that it takes $1 for a 24-hour run of the machine. So for me, that's cost effective. You don't always have to have a dehydrator though. You can also use the outdoors like our ancestors did. And, you know, it also reduces, as we were saying, weight and for shipping, for shelf life. There again, turns out for astronauts, they were testing the food, dehydrated food, to send up there, and they found that, yeah, dehydrated food can last up to 50 years as long as you store it without any moisture. And to not have moisture, in my little zine I share, you can use little sachets of the silicone gel, or you can use little clay balls like what was traditionally used, because they would store things in clay, and clay will absorb and keep that moisture from the food items. It's easy to use. Oh, I missed one, of nutrition. Now, nutrition for me was the key factor, because when it comes to nutrition, when you can things or pickle them, you have to use a lot of sugar, a lot of vinegar, a lot of salt. And I found that was too much for my change of diet, and very costly, as well as jars, hard to open up for me because of my hand and spinal issue. So I found it was, you can lose up to 60 to 80% of your nutrition from things by pickling or canning, whereas dehydrating, you lose maximum of 14%. I like the odds better with that. Easy to use and cook with. There again, I was, all I do is add it into water. So that's what I'm going to do today. I have some, while I'm doing my talk, this is a piece of sweet potato. That's going to be for my soup later. And these are peppers that I've sliced and dried. As you'll note, the peppers are very small because they are full of water and full of air. And these are carrots. Now, of course, it looks hard. It doesn't look as appetizing, but I'm going to just take some water. And now if you use boiled water, it goes a lot quicker. But I'm just going to use just room temperature water. And as I talk, we'll just let it rehydrate. It's the same thing as for your fruit. By dehydrating the fruit, I can rehydrate it so I can make jam without a jar. And also I can snack on these. This is apricots that I have. So of course they don't look as appetizing, but there again, I'll just add a little bit of water, and while I talk, they'll rehydrate. Now, when you rehydrate, you don't always have to use water. I've used tea from my sweetgrass tea because it's a nice vanilla kind of flavor. Or you can use other medicines, teas to infuse, such as hyssop. It has a nice licoricey flavor to it. You got add that in. So it really, I find is far more creative as to use, in your chef aspect. Reduces the cost of food, definitely. I find by dehydrating my food, I don't have to do it every year. So let's say I get a good year where I have access to some really good farm carrots. Well, I did. One year I dehydrated 40 pounds worth of beautiful purple carrots from the farm. I do from the farm because from the store they spray with debud, and I find it transfers into the food, and I didn't like the taste of that. So root vegetables I do get from our local farm, CSA. You can get a lot more access with what you call it, Direct Farm Manitoba. That's a way to access CSAs as well as online. There's lots of farmers now that are going online. But anyway, I did up that 40 pounds, and it turns out I didn't even get through 10 pounds for one winter. So I'm like, well, geez, I got enough now for 4 or 5 years. So once you do a large batch, you don't have to do it every year. So it really saves me on cost, especially when, our prices are going up. And last year there was a good crop from the Okanagan. I wanted to support the berries and the apricots and stuff from there. So I did buy at the store a whole bunch of it and dehydrated it all. And that will last me now for at least 5 years. When you look at all the other fruits I got dehydrated, maybe even more. And as for reducing food waste, oh my goodness, does it ever? Because I don't really peel much of my things, but when I do, I put it into my vermicomposting bin for my worms. So there's nothing really left over. When I have greens, such as beet tops, carrot tops, any tops of things, I usually dehydrate that. And same with lettuce. People say, why would you do that? Well, when you look at the cost of a 1 cup worth of green smoothie powder, I looked at the ingredients, and guess what? It was beet tops, carrot tops, kale, lettuces, spinaches. So I'm like, wow, I can save myself loads of money. And right now I got a 5-gallon pail of my green flour, which I can then use for smoothies or put into baking or frying into pancake, whichever. So I really don't have, in fact, during winter, I had to knock on the neighbor's door to get some food waste for my worms because I didn't have any. I made use of them, right? Cultural reasons. Well, it is a traditional way of preserving food, and that's something that archaeologists have been able to prove and show how we stored it in the ground, right over where our homes were. To me, it builds relationship too with traditional foods, because then you find out really what is traditional food. A lot of things that we eat day to day is actually traditional food. So whether you be your beans, your corn, your pumpkins, your different types of squash, and down to peanuts, and sunflowers, and the list is actually quite large of our traditional foods, as well as it brings you back to how our people transported food. Because the archaeologist, through analyzing pots up in northern Manitoba, found that there was mountain goat. Wow, how did mountain goat get here? Would have gone rotten by the time if we transported it overland, and to do it in salt was just not feasible as much. So dehydrating it, far easier to do that and carry a good carcass of mountain goat, right? And it also I find when it comes to the cultural knowledge, it teaches you patience, and also that work ethic. Once I do my stuff, the satisfaction I feel afterwards, because I know I'm food secure. I know that I'm not having to worry if there's a snowstorm or a pandemic or other social issues. My cupboards are full, and I have, a security in that. And also sharing it, the cultural aspect of sharing. I'd be at the garden and people would be, I'd meet up with them there, and it's downtown Winnipeg, 545 Broadway, where I do a permaculture garden. And I'd bring some dried stuff with me, and I'd pull it out and start sharing. And one time I brought some candied fish, and I soaked the fish in maple syrup and then dehydrate it. And I had it packaged up nice and neat, and got everyone to try it. And at first you can see that, I don't know if I wanna, but then when they do, oh my goodness, my jar was empty in no time. So one way to get fish into a young one too. Plus is the nutritional factor of maple syrup. I didn't quite, I don't know what the other couple things were, sorry there. But this is on our Facebook page. We do have a some really nice pictures to share, as well as some videos. I do story time as well last year. So those are the ones me sitting in the chair. And so they are videos that share the rabbit in the rose story, the squirreling way, and that type of thing. So feel free to check them out. We also have the pemmican pouch we made, and videos on how to do the pemmican. And yeah. So anyway, there was a different slideshow I was doing yesterday with Chantel, which you seem to have misplaced there. As well as we did do a zine. So on our website, you can go to this too, and you can create your own zine. And it's basically tells my story of how and why I got started with my disability. Cutting up and processing food every day was quite the challenge. My hands would go numb and such, and it got to be frustrating. So there again, I thought to myself, well, how did my Auntie Katie do it? How did my cookum do it? It's like, well, darn, they can do it. I can do it too. I'm in the middle of a city where there's food everywhere, in the sense of apple trees, plum trees, cherry bushes, many of those type of things. And so I locally forage as well. So I don't just get from a farm, I locally forage. There's raspberries, as well as taking care of a garden helps. In the garden we have, it's what you call it? It's a giving garden. So we plant for the community. And because we plant for the community, we plant things that the community can pick and eat and walk off with without having to cook it. Oh, there we were. Okay, we can slow down there, buddy. Get back to the to the top part. Yeah, if you can scroll back up, please. Okay, not all the way. Back to where I was talking, cultural reasons. The opportunity to include water in the water ceremony and rehydration, I think is important. At least for me, it has been. So when I rehydrate my food, I've usually already done a giving of thanks for the water, as well as you can use medicinal teas to rehydrate, and that's getting medicine within you too. And to facilitate the, when it comes to dehydrating, nation to nation food trade always was our traditional ways. So if we can get back to that, it would be great to be able to do that, to where we can help each other become food secure, like we did in the olden times, and do it in a modern flair. I don't sit and pound my pemmican with a rock, but I do use Vitamix. I do use modern tools, but I think that would be so much easier nowadays to do this than to, have to do it in the old way. But it can facilitate nation to nation. So we're hoping in time to have a way that people will be able to do that, or if they just take it upon themselves to do so. Start trading with other people. Trade some people have extra zucchini. Well, dry it. You can trade it, and then you can person can make their own zucchini flour, which I do, and make my vegetable flour with it. Or you can rehydrate it with juice, and then redehydrate it, and you got gummy bears, and a far more nutritional one than some of your store-bought ones. Okay, we can go to the next. So this is our gallery, and in this are peppers, and we got mushrooms. We have, it's just showing you all the different types of foods, what they look like, because they don't always look appetizing when they're dried. And as you notice, I have a whole shelf full of jars, because I found that the westernized kitchen just does not, the westernized kitchen just does not have the room for all your produce. And it's a little harder to see everything. So I have a label on the side and a label on the top, and then through the shelf units, I can look down through and see where stuff is. Also, because of my condition, I can't put my arms up high. So having cupboards that are up high just wasn't functional for me. But having these shelf units, this is only half of what I actually have. There's another picture that shows the other half. But once you start, I found I just couldn't stop. I just so enjoyed dehydrating things. So we've got dehydrated cucumber, we've got dehydrated, yeah, as you can see, and that's just duct tape on top of the thing, so it makes it easier to rewrite over top. And yeah, so as you can see, there's quite a list of things. And then we have tomatoes, really nice yellow tomatoes. And there we have garlic. And then once you powder it, you got your own garlic powder. There again, I have on the bottom there is radishes, because I like spicy stuff. I don't like what spices do to me, but I can take radishes, dehydrate them, grind them up, and then I got a nice spice to add on to a dry rub for your steaks or ribs or a nice roast. I've used cranberry powder on a goose, and oh my goodness, it was just delicious. So you can use these things in powdered form that can make flavoring your food a lot nicer. And when you look at mixed spices in the store, that's what they all are, is peppers and other herbs and such. Yeah, and so in the center one, I'm sorry, yesterday we were going single picture and I was able to explain it a lot better, but center one in the, no, next to it, it's the, there. But that's bone broth. I've dehydrated bone broth. What I do is I take bones that I've had from, whether it be moose or cow, or I've got even from lamb, and put them in a slow cooker, cooked it down for a good 36 hours. I like to give it a good long time to get all the nutrients out of the bone. And then the bones I put into the garden, or I put them aside, put them in the fire, and that's my bone meal for put back to the plants in the soil. And then I take that, put the bone broth, put it in the fridge so the fat separates, so then I can skim the fat off. And then I dehydrate that jelly like bone broth, and then I mix my own bouillon. And then I can add pieces of that to a bit of stock, or not stock, into water, and it makes my stock. So I don't have to buy stock from the store, of which I have no idea what kind of animal was used to make it. And when you look at some bouillon cubes, half of them, they don't even have animal product in it. It's all chemicalized flavorings. So this way I have my own bone broth. Okay, we can go back to big picture again. Or, yeah. So in our gallery, we're just showing all the different fruits and vegetables. There we have dry meat. You keep moving. Okay, sorry, this was totally different than yesterday's practice run, so I am getting all confused here of which to talk about. Anyway, the nice pretty ones with the strawberries, we did an outdoor presentation, and we just had some sticks. We made a tripod, and then we used some window screens, took some string, tied it to that. We have a fire underneath, which keeps that smoky to keep insects and such away. And by the end of the day, all of that was dried. And they're again storable. So there's peppers there, cucumbers, I think there was garlic, there's also strawberries and zucchini. But it shows you can do anything, really. Okay, can we go back to... that's me packaging up some items for Standing Rock that was being taken down. So we were able to send down all kinds of treats of different foods. It makes it a lot easier to ship and a lot easier to carry and a lot easier to reuse. Okay. And that was, as you can see, the tripod in the background there. And then we had a fire underneath, which there again, keeping people seeing that, it can be done anywhere, right? And I was presenting with the at Camps with Meaning, which is Mennonite children's camp, and I was showing them the Occam, let's see, Gete Akosmet squash. And that seed was found in a dig site where the seed was 850 years old. So showing them that our seeds being stored in the clay pots also kept the seeds viable, and sharing that was a great honor to be able to share with the kids that this is their own food. This is not, didn't come over from Europe. Not all things did. Very little actually did. So to enjoy our foods. It's a very sweet squash. I find it very delicious. I like to make it into a powder as well, and then use that into my cooking. And this is just some of my tools. You'll see the nicely decorated gourds on the bottom. They got nice decoration. Those are actually gourds, and so they're used as water containers. You can use them as scoops. You can use them in so many ways. There's my ulu as well that I use for cutting because it's a lot easier than a straight knife for me. It saves my hands in a lot of ways. So being able to share that with the kids, that not everyone uses a straight knife. Rounded knives I find work very well. Even the antlers, I use that in the garden. The tines are evenly spaced out, easy to scoop things up, because Western tools just make my hands go numb. Okay. And this is just showing some potatoes. Now, potatoes are the one vegetable you do have to cook prior, because they do have what's called tannin in them. And traditionally, when up in Peru and areas where they'd originated from, they would let frost get to it. And then that would bring the tannins to the surface. And then young people, because they were lighter and wouldn't necessarily squish the potato, they could rub that off with their feet. And then they were rinsed and it was done again. And then they were put into a stream to take away all that tannins, that black stuff, that happens. And and then they dry it, and then I can rehydrate into whatever you want. Once you rehydrate it, you can make it into mashed potatoes. You can fry them and have your, just fried. You can do whatever you want with them. That's basically what I'm saying. You can make, grind them up and make them into potato flour. So it's great. Okay. And then we were making pemmican. So I was at a friend's place and I was sharing with a group of people. So with that, we had ground bison and ground berries. Now, if you want to do a vegan version, easy. All you have to do is have cooked beans, dehydrate them, and use that instead of the meat. And you still get your protein aspect, but you can make it a vegan version. And get creative. It doesn't always have to be berries and meat. It can be, like I said, vegetarian. You can add mushroom powder, many other powders. Okay. And there's just some great pictures. This is, we were smoking meat out front in Wolseley. And I think there's another picture close by, but yeah, there we are. We were stringing up some, and I like to slice my meat super thin and along the grain, along that nice length of it, because then it holds on. And I find if you cut it like Westerners do with when they do jerky, it can break apart. And then, yeah, it's a big mess. So I like to cut it lengthwise, and then you can hang it up. We just had this in the front yard, puts a great thing, and put a little smoke, little barbecue pit underneath that had some coals already and some maple bark from a local tree that was taken down. And yeah, and boy, everything smelled like bacon though. So on there, we put on top some veggies and got to smoke the veggies. It gives a beautiful flavor to them. But it's showing you can do it anywhere, really, right? You're only limited by your imagination, I say. And so I do talks with different groups and different people. And it's fun. It's fun to be able to share that, right? And fun to be able to share the the knowledge with it. And there's the dried meat. Just some of the tools I used. I found that when I switched away from metal, that my food tasted better. So I use a lot of things that are wooden or ceramic or glass. And I just find I really now can taste metal in other foods when they're cooked in other foods. And so on our Facebook site, we do have a lot more pictures and stories and such. Yeah. So here's some more pictures of, well, of spices and herbs and such. And sorry, I can't go into each one of them because, yeah, I'm kind of thrown off here. That's a short video on a person rehydrating some pumpkin. They made chai pumpkin fruit leather, and then they were able to use it in their cooking. I'm just going to give my little bit of jam here, a little stir. And I think with patience also, it really helps to, it does teach that. This is a video on pemmican. And so we're just showing the different ones. And hands-on, yeah. Once you start doing it, you'll find that, yeah, it's very, very helpful. I don't know where this is going here, young Jordan there. You got me all confuzzled here. But anyway, on my Facebook site, Dehydration Nations, I share, you can go and look at all these videos. I do have resource things, as I mentioned already. We do have the zine, which you can print out, and it shares also weight distribution and weight measurements. So as you can see on this weight measurement, we, beets, dry weight of 95 pounds, are, yeah, 95 pounds is actually 500 and some pounds of original weight. So they showed the original weight and then how much it is dry weight. So once you dry them, it's a lot lighter, a lot easier to ship. And so like apples and fruit, you can make them chunky, or I like to sometimes to make things crispy. I put it into to get a lot of air, like in a blender or the Vitamix, then gets a lot of air into it and then dehydrate it. And then it can make your fruit leather a little bit more crispier, more like a peanut brittle in a way. And you can also add nuts into it and dehydrate it with the nuts. And then you got a nice snack. I find those snacks are a lot nicer to munch on than buying ones from the store that, there again, you don't know what's in. And cost. The cost that it takes to go out and buy something, and transportation wise and such, is a lot more. And so there again with our oregano and herbs, I find they're far more intense, so you don't have to use as much. One time my daughter used some of my garlic powder, and the whole house smelled like garlic. So do use a third of what your recipe calls for, because it is very strong. Your rosemary is going to be a lot stronger. Your basil is going to be a lot stronger than your store-bought. Store-bought usually has been sitting a long time. So a lot of times it's cut with other things such as flour, which for me, flour, I really makes it hard to digest. And so once you take the fillers out, yeah, it's a lot more stronger, but also it can tend to clump. So there again, using something like a little clay balls in there will keep it from clumping up. And unfortunately, they didn't, I'm going to have to talk with them. They didn't do how much the meat weight, but there again, it's usually 5 to 1. So if you got a pound of vegetables, we got, you know, let's see, if you got 5 pounds of let's say an ice cream pail full of berries, it will convert down to 1 pound of dried. So 9%. And yeah, so that gives you your numbers when it comes to dehydrating. For me, it was just cost effective. It was environmentally effective in the sense I don't have any waste. No more boxes from food or cans or packaging that I've had to use. And so it makes it a lot more economical for me as well, financially. So that way, because on disability, a lot of people think we get everything, but in reality on disability, we get $3.95 a day for food. And that makes it very hard to get yourself better on that type of thing. So I find by having the dehydrated foods, it's made it a lot more healthier for me. And so I lost 100 pounds. I lost my diabetes. So medically, it's been a lot better for me. Let's see, what's our time at here? So I can't say any more. Pictures, I'm sorry, are jumping all over, but there again, you can see from our website as well as on our Facebook page, all of these images, as well as the zine. It talks about drying, what different things you can use, as long as you got air and warmth. I don't like to use an oven because it usually takes temperature too high, and then you end up baking everything. And it doesn't get the airflow through, and you use a lot more electricity because you're using 220 volt instead of their 110. And you can even make an outdoor solar one. And I think that's about it. How about we take some questions now, because I'm sorry, Jordan, I can't follow you.
Okay, all right. Sorry, that's my fault, Audrey. I'm just going all over the place here.
Yeah.
So,
Well, last night's practice run, I had everything in my head set, and then all of a sudden today it's like, woo, out the window.
oh.
But we adapt.
All right.
But I think I got information out. So in chat, what is there?
People are mostly introducing themselves. Welcome, everyone. So I have a question from Emmerich. He's wondering, do you measure moisture levels in the finished product?
In a way you do, because once you put it into your jar, you're not going to just walk away and leave it, because that can lead to problems if there is a little bit of moisture left. And that you'll notice when you go back to your jar, you'll take a look, and if you see condensation on the inside of the jar, it means there's still moisture there. And that means take it out, dehydrate it, because I've made mistakes in my past and lost some meat because I didn't check on it and there was still moisture in it and there was mold. So I learned from my mistakes, and after that, made sure I checked my jars afterwards for any condensation, as well as taking the little clay balls that are already baked. And you can get those at even plant stores. They have those little balls for hydroponics and all that. And you can use those little clay things and put them in your jar. And that way that will absorb the moisture, right?
Mhm. Okay. Next question was from Sheila. Where could I learn how to dehydrate food? Hands-on would be good, she said.
That's your best bet. Do it yourself. You can use what we share as a guide, but I find doing it yourself, it's going to be the best, because your humidity level in your house is going to be different from the next house, than from the church or from another space that you're dehydrating, right? So it matters on your own hands-on, and how thick you make the slices, and what you're going to use it for afterwards. So hands-on and self-learning, I find, is very important. I'm sure on the internet there's tons of videos. That's why I don't really post anything to YouTube, because there's already so many people who are doing this, because this was not just Indigenous, but it was Indigenous around the world. The world itself has been dehydrating food for thousands of years. So even friends I have from Kazakhstan, they dehydrate their fruit the same way, and they rehydrate it in the same way in their porridge, or they make rehydrate and make like a soup or a dessert with it. So it's worldwide.
Nancy asks, do you have resources, print materials which can be downloaded?
Yeah, as we shared the zine,
The zine, yeah.
that can be downloaded, and that's just my own personal walk with this method.
And I believe Beth shared the link to that. It's
Yep.
also dehydrationnations.com /ZINE. And that's where you can see more detailed instructions. Nancy asks, can you over dry?
Actually, I found no. Because it matters what you're using it for, but I find you can't really over dry anything. I've done it, and I find that you can sometimes put too much water in when you're rehydrating, but there again, you can also unhydrate. I'm just checking my veggies here. They're starting to soften up. Okay. Explain my process to dehydrate the broth. Well, you make a broth, your bone broth or chicken or whatever, put in the slow cooker. I have it described, I'm pretty sure in the scene, but then you take it, you put it in the fridge, let it cool down, the fat will separate, you scoop the fat off, and then that's what you're left with, is like a jelly substance. You can scoop that out. I usually scoop out about 2 cups per tray and dehydrate it. And as the warmth of the dehydrator happens, it breaks it down to, more liquidy form. And then, and then I just take it out and it's dried, and then I can put it in a jar and got my bouillon. People say, well, it takes a long time. Well, you know what? The machine's doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm doing other things while the machine is on, right? So that's why I know with over drying is there's been times I've gone and had a nap and then woke up going, oh, darn, left something on. But I come to it and it's fine. The 2 things that do take the longest though is eggs and bananas. A lot of sugar and a lot of moisture in bananas. So with that, I did find those do take the longest, but most things usually only take 6 to 8 hours. So that means out of a 24-hour run, I can get 3 loads of stuff done, if I have 3 loads to do. When it comes apple time, I can do up to 50 apples per machine. And that takes about 6 to 8 hours there again. So I can possibly do about at least 150 apples in one day, which does me good. And my daughter's tree produces a lot. So there's lots to do things. Do I ever salt things before dehydration? Not really, no. We get there's enough salt in the food itself, I find. I think because I no longer eat processed food, I no longer have that protective coating on the tongue like many people have. So I really taste salt in processed foods, where before, when I was eating processed foods, I didn't. And that's why I can understand why people would sometimes think natural food is bland. It's not the food that's bland, it's your tongue. And that a doctor shared with me that yes, the tongue will get a protective coating when exposed to a lot of chemicals and such from daily eating, from daily food. So I found once I went off of that processed food, my tongue is a lot more sensitive to the nuances and flavors of our real foods. And when it comes to cost, like I said, I haven't been in a store really relying upon a store for 14 years. So it's really saved me a lot in finances. So, and meat and fish, I mean, if you want to, you could. If you want to add a bit of salt and soy sauce, or with my fish, I like mine candied. So I like mine in maple syrup. Soak it for a couple of days in that maple syrup, make sure no oxygen is in the bag, and then take that out and dry it. Oh, delicious. Because believe me, some fish, there's no flavor at all to it. So give it a little boost of flavor if you want. You can add herbs too, so to some meats, because in some pictures we showed that there's some meats that have some herbs that we put on before we dried it. But it's not an absolute. I've had meat chips where I've sliced the meat super thin, and to me it's like potato chips, but better. And then I can dip that meat into whatever sauce I want to. So that way I'm not stuck with one type of jerky aspect. I can put into sweet and sour sauce or into a, whatever sauce I want, even a ranch one, and then flavor the meat chips that way.
Jody asked, do you ever create a dish first and then dehydrate it? Or do you always dehydrate single ingredients and then combine later to create a dish?
No, I actually dehydrate my single ingredients only because I'm creative when I'm cooking, and sometimes I don't want as much mushrooms, and sometimes I don't want as much carrots or peppers. And, I just find this a lot easier than to go to my shelf unit and go, what do I feel like today? Right. And that way I'm not stuck with one dish. Right. And yes, and this saves also because I'm not one to measure. I'm old school. Put a dab of this, a dash of that, a little bit of this, a little of that, and kaboom, you got your soup or your stew. Your soup or stew just matters how much liquid's in it. Right? But the first time I rehydrated to make a soup, I put too much vegetables, and this veggies were coming out of the slow cooker because they already absorbed all the water. So I was like, okay, took some of it, put it aside, and had that for another dish, and then added more water so it would equally balance. It takes a little practice, right? Nothing's going to be absolutely perfect the first time. So the more practice you get, the better it is for many people. And
Liz had a
looking at
kind of a longer spiel, but she's asking, do you happen to work with school groups at all? Like, are you available to book?
I have worked because of the pandemic. I find the Zoom is fantastic, saves on cost and travel. I have a medical condition, so for me to go places now is more of a challenge. But with Zoom, we're now able to Zoom into your room and share what knowledge we can, right? And it's fun when kids get to taste stuff that they've made, right? So I've done it with the Camps with Meaning group, and one day the kids, they cut up all the stuff, and then I left the dehydrator there, and then the next day they got to munch out on it, and they were like, wow, this is like candy, so all the fruit that they dried, it was like candy to them, and that's far healthier than giving something that I find a lot of the store-bought dehydrated fruit roll-ups have a lot of sugar in them. And I tasted, even when I've gotten things from Bulk Barn, their dried fruit and dried berries, that they're grainy, and that graininess comes from the sugar, because in naturally dried, it doesn't have that texture. Why can't you dehydrate fat from the bone broth? Because it's yucky and it will go rancid, and it does not dry because it's fat. How many dehydrators do I have? I did at one time have 4, but as well as an outdoor one. I've donated 2 to a young person who was learning, so that way he could provide for his family, and that's gets shared on our Facebook page there. It was nice that he was a new father, and he didn't have to worry about running to the store because he had his little one. He could just go to the cupboard and get out some dried onions and carrots and beans and that, and put it in his soup thing, and he made himself a real nice curry.
Nancy's wondering, if you use silica packets, where do you obtain them?
Well, that's where I'm upcycling because my grandbaby loves seaweed, and every package of seaweed has one of these little silicone packets in it. So I've been getting her to put them aside for me. Right? But you can also get silicone packages from, let's say, Michael's, when they use it for drying flowers. Put it into, make yourself a little little pouch thing that you can put the silicone beads into and drop them into your produce, and that's great. See, and it's a lot cheaper to buy a big thing of silicone powder, or I don't like to use the powder, but if you get the silicone beads that they use for flowers and such, well, there again, it's already out there. But like I said, I upcycle for my grandbaby's seaweed because she eats a lot of it.
That's actually
And
a
girl
good
eats it
tip.
more than chips. Sorry, Jordan?
That's a good tip. That's a pro tip. What type of fat do you use in your pemmican when you make it?
Well, when it comes to fats, I find that ones that go solid is for when I want to take it to places. Or if I want it loose, I can use sunflower oil. It takes a lot longer for it to absorb. But if you preheat your fat, as I've shown in our videos, you can then pour a little bit at a time, let it incorporate, then a little bit more, a little bit more. I happened to one year be downtown where the guy that was selling bison, and I asked him if he had some bison fat. And he's looking at me kind of weird, but he went back into his trailer and yeah, he did have some bison fat. So bought the fat, nice big slab of it. And that's lasted me now 5 years, one big slab. Because then I rendered it, I took it home, I cut it up, put it in my slow cooker, which then melts it all. And then you can scoop out any impurities such as gristle and stuff. And then I poured it into, I had nice little ice cube trays, so little hearts. So that way I knew it was 1 tablespoon. And then, put them in the fridge, let them get hard and that. And then I had my own fat from the bison fat. You can even go to the butcher store and you can get beef fat. I don't like to use pork. Pork can go rancid very quickly. And never use water when you're rendering your fat. Some people do because they think it's going to burn, but if you're using a slow cooker, you never have to worry about that. But if you use water to start up your lard production, you have to keep that lard refrigerated because that water can cause the fat to go rancid. Nothing worse than ruining a whole bunch of pemmican with rancid pork. Right.
All right, we have 2 more minutes for questions. Anyone else get your questions in?
And if you want to contact me, just well, I'm on Facebook, just Audrey Logan, because I don't have fancy names because I have a hard time remembering them. And you can contact me through Messenger there. Because of my vision issue, I do like to be able to see and hear, and typing is a little challenge. But also we can put up my email address, which is loganaudrey13@gmail.com. And there again, I don't charge money for my teachings. I do gift in kind. So ask me if whatever I need and at the moment, and I'll let you know, and then we can see how that works out. So like with one group, they got me a bison roast. Another group got me some maple syrup. So it's not always about money. It's about gifting, and that makes it far more, I find, nicer to be able to share that exchange with food. So with one group, they got me a whole bunch of Saskatoons last year, 3 nice boxes of them. So I was able, because I share a lot. So I share with other people, and that way it's easier for me to gift as well as to have enough for myself. And I think Chantel can put my email in the chat. But the chat will shut down once we have, once we go away. So.
Are there any easy free projects people can do, like short of buying a brand new dehydrator, like just in their houses?
Yeah, I've actually, on our Facebook page, there's someone who had an old radiator. And she put her stuff on the radiator on a tray, and her apples and her lettuce dried nicely right on the radiator. And like I said, my first one was a south facing window. with a fan and the windows open and the light from the sun, did it. Just takes a little bit longer, but what the heck? I'm not doing anything. I'm doing other things actually. If I just let it sit there and have an oscillating fan, you can, as long as there's air circulation and warmth, it'll dry.
Okay, great. I think that wraps up all of our questions for the Q&A. And as Audrey mentioned, you can go to our website at dehydrationnations.com, or you can check out the Facebook page under
I was going to show
Dehydration
you.
Nations.
Yeah, and here I got my apricot jam. And there's, even though this could, there's a little bit of water left in it, but actually it's your juice. Now I got apricot juice.
Oh,
Right? And this way too, if I put it in a blender, just add more water and you got juice, and you don't have to go out and buy juice to make your own. So tasty.
I'm just gonna quickly post her email address in the chat before we wrap up. If you got any last questions, feel free to put them in there.
Yeah,
Send her a
Tommy
message.
said on how they'd be able to access the video later.
On Facebook. Oh, the recording. Okay, so we had mentioned that earlier, that all our recordings will be up within the next 2 business days. And it will be on our Green Action Center YouTube channel, and it will be under our playlists at 2022 Wise Webinar Series. Yeah.
And to Dinah Robinson, awesome. Yes. You use the radiators for drying or germinating seeds and drying herbs, but you can dry other things as well with a radiator. You can even make like a little cage thing over the radiator, a little plastic kind of greenhousey thing. And that's what I use a greenhouse for, actually.
There's another pro tip.
Yeah. You can use that outdoors. Have your little greenhouse set up outdoors, and then you can put your fruit out there during the day and walk away. But there again, you do want to have some airflow, right?
So in the event you might have missed the webinar, since there were 6 in our 6-part series, you can go to our website. This is where you can go, youtube.com, Green Action Center playlists. Watch them at any time. We also have previous year playlists as well if you want to check them out. And if you want to reach out to us at the First Nations Waste Minimization, it's on our screen. You can also follow us on Facebook or Instagram, or even join our new newsletter. All right. Any final words, closing remarks, Audrey?
Well, for me, it's just been such a delight to share this, because it can create a little bit more of food security, as well as food knowledge, and as well as finances. It really has helped me a lot with finances to be able to afford good food and access, and being able to share with people as well, the dried foods. So take it upon yourself just to, try a little bit. Try a little bit of something. You don't have to go in as deep as I have, but I find that I'm an all or nothing kind of gal. And it's just worked for me. Yeah, it's really worked for me. And I figure, with my income, which is very little, as well as my health condition, if I'm able to do it, then, people who are able-bodied and more financially secure should be able to wing it really great, and then start sharing that. Because that's what food does. Food unites our people. So it can unite everybody through the food. And have fun.
Yes. And check out her zine. She has a lot of tips, tricks, everything you may have further questions, maybe they get a chance to answer here. And yeah, so Thank you so much, Audrey. We appreciate you joining us and everyone that was able to attend our webinar today. If there's anyone that missed it, you can check both our YouTube channel, which is listed here on the chats. So thanks, everyone, and we hope you have a good day.
Have a great day. Keep it dry.
Thank you, Audrey.